Howdy folks, welcome to Cowboy Up, a celebration of the American cowboy. I'm Ron Wilson, Cowboy Poet Laureate, and I'm mighty pleased to be your host. Recently, the United States celebrated the 150th birthday of one of its great historic landmarks, the Chisholm Trail. The Chisholm Trail brought millions of head of cattle from Texas up to Kansas, and that's where the legend of the American cowboy came to life. Today we're going to celebrate the American cowboy with music from Ed LaValle, cowboy poetry from Rose Bacon and C.W. Harris, a look at Western history with the cowboy Jim Gray, and music from Annie Wilson and the Tallgrass Express String Band. Now we invite you to saddle up and enjoy the ride. I'm here with Ed LaValle and Ron Hutchison. Ed, the year 2017 will mark the 150th anniversary of the creation of the Chisholm Trail. And people may not know the history of the Chisholm Trail and the pivotal role played by a cattle buyer named Joe McCoy.
That's right. He was the one that came down from Illinois and figured out that if he could get those cattle that were worth about $5 a head in Texas up to the railheads in Kansas, he could make a profit. And so he sent word down there to Texas, and they started bringing those cattle up the Chisholm Trail that was marked by Jesse Chisholm to trade with the Indians in Indian Territory. Also, you know, then as the railheads moved south, why they started going to Abilene, Dodge City, well, Newton before that, Newton and Wichita, then Abilene, Dodge City, and you know, so I like to turn this history into music, and so I have a couple of songs. One is The Real McCoy, and the other one is The Ballad of the Border Queen, which refers to Caldwell, which is right on the Kansas-Oklahoma border. Well, at that time it was the Indian Territory, but now, you know, it became known as the Border Queen. And it was the roughest, toughest cattle town, and there was more shooting and killings went on there than all these other cattle towns combined.
That's what they tell me. Joe McCoy really traveled down the railroad line, right? And it was Abilene was the first place that was willing to take him on.
Right. He tried Junction City and Salina and Solomon, and they wouldn't talk to him. They thought he was nuts, you know, and so he finally got somebody to listen to him in Abilene, and then, you know, the rest is history, I guess.
I've heard that phrase, the real McCoy, and depending on who you believe, there are those who say that the term real McCoy originated with Joseph McCoy. You do a great job with that song, and particularly with the harmonica accompaniment. Ron, how long have you been playing harmonica with Ed? How'd you guys get connected?
Oh, we run into each other about 5 years ago, and I lived out of Wellington for a while, and when came back, and we had a common. We liked the old Roy Rogers, Gene Autry cowboy type music, and so we worked out with each other, and it became it fit.
It sure did. Here's Ed LaValle and Ron Hutchison with Joe McCoy is the Real McCoy.
Texas had wildcats, Kansas had the rails. Joe McCoy brought them together with his master plan. Junction City, Salina, they all turned him down. No one believed in him in Abilene town. Joe McCoy was the real McCoy, this man of whom we sing. Joe McCoy was the real McCoy, the cattle he did bring. On a few log cabins Cattle being scaled, the hotel and the bank. Cattle will be drinking from the new water tank. Joe McCall was the real McCall, this man of whom we sing. Joe McCall was the real McCall, the cattle he did bring. Oh, he had a vision, put his plan in action, didn't sit around and talk, wait for things to happen. Sing her down to Texas, bring the cattle up, kids in Abilene, Missouri, that's within a coffee shop. Joe McCall was the real McCall, man of whom we sing. Joe McCall was the real McCall, the cattle he did bring. Years of fighting Indians, dust and buds and rain, yes, some of the cowboys' trials drove them through this rain. First Abilene and Newton, and Wichita and South, dodging all over filled with cattle, by word of mouth. Joe McCall was the real McCall, this man of whom we sing. Joe McCall was the real McCall, the cattle he did bring. If you have a vision, don't be doubting man, just be like the real McCall and believe best you can. Just be like the real McCall and believe best you can.
My husband and I own and operate a ranch in the Flint Hills.
Just start over.
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
Okay. My husband and I own and operate a ranch in the Flint Hills, and we're full partners. We work together, we do business together, and we live together. Now, not every married couple can handle that, but for the most part, we do pretty well. So this is a poem for my partner. What do you see when you look at this man, when you watch him walk, or when you look at his hands? What do you think of his quiet ways? And do you wonder how he spends his days? Well, I see hands that are gentle with a newborn calf, hands that tickled our kids and made them laugh. I see hands that are firm when training the horse, hands that care and nurture, and treat cattle, of course. And his walk is a steady and determined pace, but he'll outlast any rabbit to win his race. And his days are spent on God's great land, and I'm glad to be here when he needs a hand. His time belongs to the stock and the seasons, and he loves this ranch for all the right reasons. He's a good mechanic and can fix most things. He'll weld, build fences, and pound out dings. I see the real sides of him, come what may, because we work together here every day. We'll saddle our horses in the morning and then off we'll ride. We tend this ranch together, working side by side. Riding the prairie underneath clear blue skies, he'll smile and say, just another day in paradise. Oh, he's seen tough times and personal loss, but he doesn't let on how much it costs. He just keeps on going the way you must do if you don't want things to get the best of you. His word and his handshake are as good as gold, and his name in his hand, now I'm proud to hold. Oh, he's determined and stubborn as he can be when I try to convince him that the right one is me. And he's not a saint. No, that could never be, because I couldn't live with a saint or a saint with me. When he's happy, his eyes twinkle and he'll have a grin. When he's angry, he's quiet and he'll set that chin. But his temperament's even, and he doesn't cuss. He thinks of God first and then of us. I'm proud enough he cares enough to do things right, and he's strong enough not to have to prove his might. He loves this land and our life together, and I pray God lets us partner forever. And that's my partner.
I'm visiting with cowboy historian, author, speaker Jim Gray, who's also director of the National Drovers Hall of Fame. Jim, it's great to be with you.
Thank you.
Jim, I love the depth of your history and knowledge about the cowboy culture, but you were telling me that the origin of the cowboy really goes back to the collision of a couple of cultures. Tell us
Yes.
about that.
Well, the origins of our ranching industry are really recognized as coming out of Texas, and that was the result of a culture that went back to the English culture and its cattle industry, its livestock industry in general, out of the colonies, moving south, eventually into Louisiana, and then out into East Texas, where that clash with the Spanish culture came about, and the Spanish vaquero. Okay, so the English were used to penning their cattle, controlling their cattle, while the Spanish, going all the way back into Spain, handled their cattle in open range conditions. They did not castrate their bulls, so a herd of cattle was cows and bulls. And of course, the English, in wanting better control, they took care of the bulls and made them steers. So when you come together with those two cultures, you take a little bit of each, and the horsemanship of the vaquero was passed on to a culture that was not as strongly oriented towards the horse, and the open range of the Spanish. And what you then develop is an open range culture that has its English-based pens around the headquarters, and a certain way of handling the cattle that makes the whole system a hybridization of the two cultures.
And so when did this happen? When did this melding of the cultures and the creation of the cowboy come about?
That basically came with with Texas and its freedom from Mexico, and so you had the settlement coming out of the United States into Texas, and that's what brought the English into relations with the Spanish culture. So 1830s and into the 1840s, this all developed.
And that was the beginning, which led to the trail drive era.
Yes.
We'll hear more about that. We're visiting with cowboy historian Jim Gray, the cowboy.
I spent a few years rodeoing growing up, and when you rodeo, you always have a bunch of stories about wrecks, and that's what this next poem is about. Probably the most unique wreck I've ever been in. It's called Jumpin' Jack. Well, I was sitting around town with not much to do. Our rodeo season was over and all the local shows were through, till my buddy, he tracked me down one fall day. He said he found one more rodeo and it wasn't too far away. I tell him, sounds good to me, call me in. I'm thinking, it's tough to find a good a friend as him. Well, the day comes and we jump in the truck and I ask him, well, just how far we got to go? He said, oh, it's just across the state line, over in Missouri ways. We'll be there before you know. When we pull in the rodeo grounds, I start to see that things are a bit different. as I look around. Well, there were mules everywhere, as far as the eye could see, and I turned to my buddy and he said, "I didn't know. You gotta believe me." He said, "This is no big deal. It's just another rodeo." I said, "That's great for you. You're a bull rider, but I ride broncs, and I'm sure they'll have mules at this show." He said, "That's all right. Riding broncs is your middle name. Shoot, you can spur the hair off these old mules just the same." Well, you know, maybe he's right. He talked me up so I finally started to see the light. Well, there was no way I was going to let some mule throw me to the ground. Just like my buddy said, I was the best bronc rider around. Well, I grabbed my rigging bag and head for the chutes. I know when I leave tonight, it's going to be with a pocket full of loot. Well, I find my draw, and he's not much to see. He's small and got a little sway in his back. Contractor seen me staring him down and said, "That there's little Jumpin' Jack." Well, he looked a little funny, I thought. I said, "He's kind of a cute little sucker." Contractor just grinned and said, "Don't let him fool you, son. He's a first-class bucker." Well, with my confidence still riding high, I say, well, he better be, because I'm sure little Jack ain't never seen the likes of me. Well, the grand entry was interesting to say the least. They used all mules, of course, and I do believe that was the first time I'd ever seen a grand entry without a single horse. Well, it's time for the barebacks now, and they start running them in, except for little Jack. He was content just to stand there in the back of the pen. Well, when they finally get him rounded up, we're sure now to be the last to go. I sit and watch as all the cowboys in front of me, one by one, get thrown. Well, when they finally pushed him to chute number 3, I cinched my rigging down tight, but I didn't like how it sat. It really didn't look quite right. That was when it hit me. Well, my rigging wasn't made for these critters. It was made for a horse. You see, mules ain't got no withers. You know that pointy part of a horse above their shoulders where it blends into their neck? Without withers, well, there's nowhere for my rigging to set. If it slides too far forward, we're liable to have one heck of a wreck. Well, they're working their way down to me, so it's too late to back out now. I reach down, give my latigo one more big pull. When I did, Jack let out a bray and kicked the back gate. Pow! He didn't like that. Not one little bit. And as time went on, well, I was liking this less and less. I look around and try to see where that so-called friend of mine was that got me in this mess. Well, it's our turn next, so I climb over the top of the chute, ease down on Jack, and work my hand in the rigging until it's tight. I slide up, nod my head, and for lack of a better term, boys, we take flight. Well, I'm not sure they ever got the gate open all the way. Jack didn't have time to sit around and wait on no gate. He's too busy making hay. Well, our second jump took us so high that I could have looked that announcer right square in the eye. Well, Jack would duck left, then right, seemed almost simultaneously. I didn't know better. I thought he was just playing with me. About the time he jumped out from under me and I was sure I was headed to the ground, well, he jumped back under me and let me ride another round. Well, 8 seconds is a long time when you're on the back of a critter that doesn't want you there. But I had to be getting close. I knew the end had to be near. Well, Jack takes another big high dive, and I feel my rigging give just a little, and I hustle my feet back to the front, just trying to stay in the middle. Well, we go up again, and the spurs are flying, and so is the hair, and the next thing I know, Jack leaves me and my rigging sitting in midair. Well, how he threw it, I'll never know, and I had plenty of time to think on my way down, and I hit with a thud and crumple into a pile of flesh and leather right there on the ground. Well, I make a quick assessment. Nothing seems to be hurt but my pride, so I gather myself and make my way to the chute. My buddy's there and asks, "How was the ride?" He said, "You looked real good. I think you'd have been right in the mix. That is, if you could have stuck with him a little longer than 2.6.
I'm here with Annie Wilson of Tallgrass Express String Band. Annie, you were honored a couple of years ago as Flint Hills Balladeer. Tell us about that.
Well, it was just a wonderful thing. Some folks in my community, I think, nominated me for this, and the Department of Wildlife and Parks gave me a nice certificate for putting the story of the Flint Hills into music and words, and I try to share that with the people that we play in the band. And my husband and I ranch here west of Elmdale, Kansas, and I just feel really fortunate to live in this part of the world, and it's a good news story. I like to tell people about the Flint Hills and ranch life. It was a wonderful honor.
The Flint Hills region is part of the tall grass prairie, really the last remaining vestige of the original native tall grass prairie. Only about 4% of that prairie ecosystem still exists, and it's found right here in the Flint Hills of Kansas.
Yes, we are in an amazing place. Once the largest continuous ecosystem, and now the most altered ecosystem, and this is the last stand of the tallgrass prairie here in the Flint Hills. People, of course, come from all over the country, sometimes all over the world, to see this place because it's a very special place.
It also has to do with the name of your band, Tallgrass Express String Band. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, we just, I think the tall grasses are the signature symbol of the Flint Hills, and so that's how my husband and I make our living on the grass. Is the thing that makes us keep our business going.
If you take care of the grass, it'll take
care
right?
of you, yes.
The Flint Hills is also a place where cowboys still work. They ride horses, they work cattle, and that's what this next song is about, and true cowboys can relate to it. So here is Tallgrass Express String Band, Annie Wilson, Carl Reed, Jim Versch, and Kim Schmidt with Workin' Flint Hills Cowboy.
Meet him on the back roads in his dusty old flatbed. His trailer's lost a paint job and it's down to rusty red. He's probably headed home now cause his day's already gone. His horse and him have been at work since well before the dawn. His dashboard's like a journal of his complicated days. Some ear tags and some iodine and little bits of hay. Rusted grain, his worn out gloves, fencing whips and pliers, and arrowhead, his favorite spurs, and a piece of baling wire. He's a working Flint Hills cowboy, though he doesn't own a ranch. He's just the one who does the work way out there on the land. There ain't no money in it, but he has all that he needs. As long as he can ride out in these hills to keep him free. Went out this morning just a little after 4. Cotton saddled up his pony and then shut that trailer door. Headed up the ridge road over past the county line to meet the other riders as the sun began to rise. He could ride him through a herd and cut a stray out just like magic. He's patient and he's gentle and he knows those critters' logic. But if a renegade comes charging, he knows just what to do. He's handy with the rope, so he can catch and load him too. He's a working Flint Hills cowboy, always trying to make ends meet. He helps down at the sale barn, hauls hay and winter feed. There ain't no paid vacation, he'll be the first to say. But many folks would probably like to live their lives his way. His chaps are full of patches, his hat's a dusty brown. His pony ain't no show horse, but she sure can get around. He probably knows most pastures much better than the owners. He's ridden every ridge and draw clear back into the corners. He's always there to help us put the critter in that stray. We trust him like a brother, cause he's just that way. Doesn't talk a lot, but there are stories he could share. With wild cattle, raging storms and dangers, he's been spared. He's a working Flint Hills cowboy, though he doesn't own a ranch. He's just the one who does the work way out there on the land. There ain't no money in it, but he has all that he needs. As long as he can ride out in these hills and keep him free.
folks. It's been great having you with us today. Thanks for joining us here on Cowboy Up. Special thanks to our guests on today's show, Ed LaValle, cowboy poets Rose Bacon and C.W. Harris, cowboy historian Jim Gray, and Annie Wilson and the Tallgrass Express String Band. This is your host, cowboy poet laureate Ron Wilson, saying, cowboy songs and poems lift spirits like the coffee in your cup. So come back and join us next time
Have you ever
as we all
stood
cowboy up.
at your
Happy
back
trading.
porch window and watch the snow blowing by? Or in your pickup truck with the windows down, feeding cattle as it drifts up high? Or you're dreading the walk down to the stock tank, you gotta break that ice, and your forehead's froze, you got a runny nose, but oh how you love this life.